All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Etta Meijer. I'm the Visual Arts Officer, and welcome. You're very welcome to the 2026 Visual Arts Project Award Information Clinic. Now, a couple of housekeeping items before we begin. So this information clinic is being recorded and it will be made available online after the session. We would ask to please write your questions that come up during the presentation into the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. This box is monitored by the visual arts assistant, Justine Harrington, who will collect the questions and we will go over them at the end of the session. I would also like to draw your attention to the option to turn on live captioning. That's also at the bottom of your screen. So for the 2026 Visual Arts Project Award Information Clinic, these are the topics we'll be discussing today. Before we begin, we would like to note that the Arts Council is committed to offering equality of access, opportunity, and outcomes to all potential applicants, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, civil or family status, religion, age, disability, race, membership of the traveler community, or socioeconomic backgrounds. As such, we're also strongly committed to providing disability access supports to applicants with disabilities of any kind. We have a disability access team whose officer, Vanessa Carswell. So if you need help with submitting your application, we would ask to please contact the team as early as possible before the deadline so we're able to help you best. Next to this, there's also the option to apply for disability access costs as part of your application, but we'll go into more detail on this later. For now, I'll hand you over to Claire Power, who will discuss the visual arts team and give an overview of the project award.
Okay, great. Thanks a million, Aletta. So thank you for everyone very much for joining us here this morning. I know in Dublin it's a sunny morning and hopefully it's similar around the rest of the country, and thanks for your time in joining us here. So my name is Claire Power and I'm the acting head of visual arts here at the Arts Council. From the visual arts team, joined here today by Ailish Lavelle, who's support manager on the visual arts team and has specific responsibility for the project award. And Ailish will speak through the second half of this presentation. Also joined by Aletta, who you've met, who is our new visual arts officer on the team, and Justine Harrington from the team as well, who is ably manning the live questions and answers. So our overall team as well is very ably assisted by our visual arts advisor, Valerie Connor, who's our advisor for organisations. We've some change in that Shauna Sullivan, who was our advisor, our long-standing advisor for the Artist Awards, has left and moved on to something else. And we're very lucky to have Holly Carnes working with us now as assessor on the Visual Arts Project Award. Thanks, Aletta. So we're here today specifically about the Visual Arts Project Award. The applications are now open. In fact, I think we've received about 3 so far, and the deadline is the 24th of July. So Thursday, the 24th of July. This purpose here of this clinic really is, I'm going to take you through the guidelines and I suppose our slides that draw from the guidelines, and maybe just important to say that everything within this presentation in terms of is drawn from the guidelines or in response to the guidelines, but those guidelines I suppose are still the primary source as well, just for referral for working alongside your application. So I suppose I'm going to take you through the guidelines. Ailish is going to look at the how-to section and has some helpful tips on making a good application, and then the live questions and answers where we can be responsive to your questions as they come in will be important. So in terms of the competitive context for last year's project award, which would be the Project Award 2025, we received 134 applications and 39 of these received funding. And in terms of percentage, that's 29%. So I suppose a little under 1 in 3 applications were funded. So the 2026 Visual Arts Project Award, the purpose of it is to support the planning, pre-production, the production and the presentation of work in the visual arts, of new work in the visual arts. And we're very happy to have this clinic here this morning as well, because there have been some changes to the strands as well for the Project Award 2026. The changes, we have three strands as per previous, but the changes you'll see occurring are to strands 2 and to strand 3. So strand 1, which is kind of that development strand, is focuses planning and pre-production, and the budget is up to 12,000. That remains unchanged. So strand 2, where the focus is production and engagement, the changes there are that the budget is now up to, or the available award is now up to 60,000, where previously this was 25,000. And strand 3 is a notable change as well, the focus being on partnership, production and engagement. And the budget, or the award there has, rather than budget, sorry, I should say award, has increased to 150,000, where previously the level was 80,000. So these are significant changes and positive developments that we're happy to bring today. So I'm going to just take you through, I suppose, a broad overview of each of the strands and to kind of touch on some of the priorities. And again, the priorities and this information will be in the guidelines to refer back to as well. So strand 1, as mentioned, is a development award. It's very much about the planning and pre-production, as referred to in the title. It supports applicants to research, prepare and confirm plans for new ambitious visual artwork and work that will be presented in the future. So strand 1 is for the initial or development phase of a project. Thanks, Aletta. Yeah. So the priorities in strand 1 are proposals that demonstrate the capacity to deliver the project or commission. They demonstrate plans for the project's production, presentation and engagement with the public. They could be about building relationships, partnerships and collaborations, and also about securing those important permissions for art in public spaces or unusual and conventional sites. And also ultimately that it supports the process of art making, producing and commissioning. So strand 1 is the development award, and it's for initial phase of a project with a budget of up to 12,000. And so strand 2, where the focus is on production and engagement with a budget of up to 60,000. So this is to support the producing and commissioning of ambitious projects in the visual arts that focus on presentation and engagement with the public. And strand 2 is for the final phase of a project. So it can be the complete project, or you can apply, for example, you can apply 1 year for strand 1 and then the next year for strand 2 or 3, or you can apply for strand 2 itself, but it is for the final or completion stage of the project. The priority in strand 2 will be given to proposals that create and present work that is ambitious. So I suppose we're talking there about, ambition and vision, ambition in execution, in delivery. So, thinking about work that is ambitious. The focus on public experience of the visual arts or public engagement with the visual arts, proposals that produce art commissions, collaborations and partnerships. And also we're interested in visual art in alternative and innovative or unusual settings. Strand 3 is with the focus on partnership, production and engagement. And the award level for this is up to 150,000. So again, you see a lot of similarities with strand 2. It's about supporting the producing and commissioning of ambitious projects, focusing on presentation and engagement with the public. I suppose the key distinction here is that for strand 3, proposals or applications must be supported by organisations with a significant track record in the presentation of visual arts to audiences. And strand 3, again, like strand 2, is for the final phase of a project or the completion of a project. Priority in strand 3, very similar as well to priorities in strand 2 with the key distinction as well. But it's about creating and presenting work that's ambitious, again, ambitious in vision, ambitious in execution, in delivery. It doesn't have to be about scale, but it is that really kind of ambitious in terms of thinking about the importance or the scale of importance of work. It's also priority will be given to applications that focus on the public's experience or engagement with the visual arts. We're interested in proposals that present visual art in alternative and unusual settings, proposals that produce art that results from commissions, collaborations, and partnerships. And that'll be really key to this strand. That's called partnership, production, and engagement. I suppose the key distinction then with strand 2 is that in strand 3, we really want to see those applications. We just really want to see those applications reflecting strong relationships and support structures and investment by the project partners, the organizations. Okay, thanks. So onto the kind of policy context, and I won't dwell too long on this either, but I suppose there is a context and a policy context for all of our work at the Arts Council. All of our awards, all of our funding programs, our development initiatives, they're all informed by our 10-year strategy called Making Great Artwork, which is 2026 to 2025, and now will extend into 2030. 26 as well. So within making great artwork, the artists and public engagement are kind of really the twin pillars of the core of that policy. And we really see our visual arts policy is aligned, and all the art firm policies are aligned to making great artwork. And with the project award in particular, we really see it as, I suppose, a dual addressing of both the kind of artist and public engagement remit. So it is a very important award for us, and one that is growing in importance as well for the visual arts, and noting again these kind of positive developments around the award levels as well. I suppose finally for me, just to dwell on our number of corporate policies that also inform the work that we do at the Arts Council and visual arts. So our EDI policy, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion policy, actions like the access costs and the assistance in terms of those kind of access costs would be direct action, for example, from the EDI policy. And paying the artist has been a really transformative policy as well, in its commitment to kind of manifesting change as well in the improving the living and working conditions of artists. And I'm going to pop a link in the chat as well, because our colleagues in the Strategic Development Department are launching their Fair Pay, Fair Practice toolkit for organisations soon, which will enable organisations or assist or help organisations to either write their artist pay policies or to update them. So there's a number of workshops happening over the next few weeks to launch that policy. And so there's workshops that are open to organisations who want to write or update their policy. And there's also a session for freelance workers and for artists as well. So while you, as a freelance artist or worker, you won't be writing a policy, but it's really important to be informed. So I'm going to pop that link in the chat in a second. And that is it for me. So I'm going to hand over to Ailish, who will go into the details of how to make an application and to have those really helpful tips. And I'll see you back for questions and answers. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Claire. Yeah, my name is Ailish Lavelle, and as Claire said, I'll be the support manager for this Project Award 2026. So over the next couple of slides, I'm going to cover who can apply, some aspects of how to make an application, the application guidelines. I'll briefly describe the 3 sections of the application form. We'll focus a little on the budget, the 2 types of disability access costs that are available and that you can apply for. We'll go into details on the various supporting materials that are required for each strand, some elements of what assessors are looking for in your application, and some useful tips. Thanks, Aletta. So who can apply? So the Project Award is open to professional artists and arts practitioners, curators, creative producers, and organisations that are currently based in Ireland. I suppose also to consider, we do accept applications from applicants who are not based in the Republic of Ireland or resident. In this case, there's been a development in the recent guidelines that's been updated so that you can actually explain in section 2.2 in the Tell Us About Yourself in the application form, so that you can actually describe in that case how your application or proposal would benefit the arts in the Republic of Ireland. And we'll determine the eligibility of the submission based on your explanation. So this is new to the guidelines. And it's really measured on a case-by-case basis. So there's no minimum requirements in order to meet that criteria. But eligibility will be measured on genuinely meeting the criteria. So of how it will be of benefit to the arts in the Republic of Ireland. Also, just to note that employees of organisations funded by the Arts Council are now eligible to apply. However, so there's a caveat to that. The employees, they can apply, or be part of an application, but if the activities are not usually undertaken by their employer, or financially beneficial to their employer. So we just wanted to update you. This is a change in this guidelines. So I suppose, say you're working in an arts centre documenting photography on an ongoing basis, you're an employee, you can apply for Arts Council funding for a project award now, whereas that wasn't clear before. But as long as you're not, I suppose, overlapping with the work of the organisation that you're employed by. Just to say on the flip side of who cannot apply, so organisations in receipt of Arts Centre funding, partnership funding, strategic funding, or also organisations or individuals in receipts of 2026 Arts Grant funding. But of course, just to say that, of course, involvement of these organisations is, of course, encouraged and in the partnership. And partnerships are very welcome in making applications. So we can go on to the next slide, please, Aletta. So this really, I'm just going to touch on how we can make an application, so how to apply. So everybody needs to have an ARN, so an artist reference number, in order to make an application to the Arts Council. There's a really helpful video on our website. So on the front page, if you scroll down a little, there's a step-by-step, a 7-step kind of guide to how to make an application. It's quite general, but if you're making your first application to the Arts Council, it could be a really useful place to start. We advise that you apply for a new ARN number. When you are applying for a new ARN number, to apply at least kind of 5 days, give it 5 days to a week to come through, so that you can make your application in time. So you can log on then with this number onto our online services. And from there, you'll be able to download an application form for the project award. Thanks, Aletta. So the application guidelines are available on the website if you look under the funding section. So we just draw your attention to 2 things. One, the guidelines are updated all the time, and the Visual Arts Project Award guidelines differ to, say, traditional arts or arts participation. And sometimes we get applications, requests from other art forums to transfer applications because the applicants have mistakenly applied for, say, traditional arts. If their application background, you know, is, say, a fine art like painting, printmaking, or sculpture, and they mistakenly think that that's traditional arts, just be mindful that that would actually be a visual arts application. We'd encourage you to read the guidelines. And also, an arts participation guideline is slightly different. So if you have a socially engaged element to your practice, but as a visual artist, we do encourage you to apply for the Visual Arts Project Award. There's a slightly different priorities in the arts participation guidelines that would require more of a co-design element or participation to the project award. So if you have any queries on this, you can always get in touch with the team. But yeah, just to say, you can download the guidelines from the main website, and beside the Visual Art Project Award guidelines is also the Access Disability form. So that's where you'll find that. We can move on to the next slide, Aletta. So I just wanted to introduce, in a very kind of overview way, the application form has 3 sections. So remember, you'll be downloading this once you log on with your ARN number, and you have to fill in this form. There's 3 sections are the general information. So this is things like your name, your ARN number, say the title of the project, or general introductory information that give a background to your project. For example, if you'll be working with children on the project, you need to fill in a child protection policy and checkbox, and various details surrounding the application. Then your proposal itself is section 2. So this is the main body of your application form. You'll be asked for a short summary of your proposal and your project, and then a longer section, about 500 words, where you'll be able to detail all of the aspects of your project. Section 3 then is expenditure, the income and the amount that you're requesting from the Arts Council. So we would suggest in this section, if you find budgets challenging, it's really good to reach out to somebody maybe to run your budget by them. So we do in the income section, for example, if you are being supported by an organisation, for example, if you got access to a free rehearsal space, you can include that as income in your budget, and it's income in kind. So say, for example, the organisation would rate that as a cost usually of about 500 euros. You can put that as in kind 500 euros, and then you put it in your expenditure section as well so that it balances up. And just being really clear about the amount that you're requesting for the Arts Council and double checking that those budgets amounts add up. For Strand 2 and Strand 3, you're requested for a detailed budget as well. So that's usually done on an Excel sheet in addition, and we'll break down a lot of these costs because there's a limited restriction for what you can add in the application form itself. So we advise if you're also submitting a detailed budget, you can put the detailed, you can put the budget headings in the application form and then break it down in your supporting material on perhaps an Excel sheet or similar. There is a section in the budget, obviously, for fees, and we would suggest checking the VAI guidelines. So the Visual Artists Ireland on their website have guidelines to, I suppose, understand the rates of pay in relation to the different career stages. So that's a really helpful guide. And bearing in mind that some other practitioners outside visual arts may have different price or payment guidelines or fees. Sometimes that's to do with being part of a union or a guild. So just bearing that in mind, it's good to check with people what their usual rates of pay are. And obviously, different specialists would have different rates. So that's just a general overview. There we can move on to the next slide. So the disability access costs, there's two types of access costs. So the first one is participant or personal disability access costs. So this is in addition to the maximum amount available to the award. So you would fill in a form to this effect, and this is for either yourself as the lead applicant, that's your personal disability costs. It could be an assistant, for example, or various other types of support, or it could be for any of your collaborators. Sometimes that involves transport cost if there are mobility support requirements or similar. And then the second type of disability access cost, this is included in your overall budget, and that's for audience disability costs. So this could be for an interpreter or making some some provisions around access. Physical access or otherwise. So it's an important distinction. So the personal participant and access costs they're in addition to your budget, and the audience costs are part of the overall kind of budget and would be considered part of kind of public engagement. So they are included in your costs. Thank you, Aletta. Here's an overview of the supporting materials that are required for the different strands. So as you can see, CVs and biographies are common to all. And that we do encourage kind of, fairly short CVs, maybe 3 pages. Biographies can be included of collaborators as well, in addition to, or instead of collaborators' CVs, you could include biographies. This really, I suppose, is the background detail for the artistic quality as a way of kind of looking at it. So it is important to include comprehensive material and backgrounds of all the participants and collaborators that you've included. Letters of support or memorandums of understanding are important across all of the applications where you're detailing partners' support. So they vary, I suppose, in terms of the scale of the awards. So Strand 2 and Strand 3, they are more significant, and suppose we would look for more detail of that support. So focusing on Strand 1 for now, it could be that you have lined up some meetings to take place, that you want to develop some of your partnerships further. You could have a letter of support. You could also include then, in addition, maybe some experts you're going to meet, or some initial conversations you're having around establishing permissions to use a public space. So that could be an email confirmation that you're meeting somebody to discuss the project further, for example. Strand 2 or Strand 3 could be more detailed, where partnerships would detail and confirm offers of support. So that's any financial offers of support or in-kind funding. And it's really important, obviously, for Strand 3 that you're detailing the partnership. So it is, we ask that you do have support of an organisation. So it's really important that that letter of support goes into some detail of those supports. So I guess, it could even include not just confirmations of funding, but also commitment to the project. And we are looking for that in the assessments. What is that level of commitment? So it's a really good place to detail that. Then, of course, work samples. We do suggest that these are all included in a PDF document. It is not mandatory that you do that. However, it does make, obviously in the Strand 2 and Strand 3, where more information is required, it's really good to make that easy to view for the assessors and also panel down the line. But it's a way of organising that supporting material as well, to keep it all together. The one thing we'd ask then is that you just comprehensively lay out images and links, testing, of course, that links work and they're not on private settings. And there's detail of all of those technical aspects of what file formats that you can use, or and what links are acceptable. And all of those are detailed in the guidelines. And just to stress that under each of the strands, we do also detail all of this out in the guidelines. So it's really comprehensive to kind of follow through the guidelines all the time as your guide. The project plan then, in the Strand 1 application, we ask for a very basic project plan. So that include timelines and distinct kind of development phases of your project. It is in pre-planning stage, so it's just how you propose to follow that through over the period of time. And then Strand 2 and 3, that is quite detailed. If you're thinking about it in terms of the feasibility and presenting a really persuasive case for your project, having thought through that project plan and developed it thoroughly, it'll make a compelling kind of case for your project. So it's a really important document. And then the budget, so there's no budget requirement for Strand 1. The application form covers that in the kind of overview. And then for Strand 2 and Strand 3, you do need to fill in the budget section in the application form, or it's good to do so, and then detail it as part of your supporting material. A good budget should be able to tell the story of the project. So in a way, it's good to get some support reading over this to see, have you left out anything? Have you thought about contingencies, rates of pay, and it's good to measure that in days, and also then the amount. But an ideal place to really think through the kind of project and make sure you've covered all aspects, and it'll really help you think through. Spending time on a budget will really help you think through the various phases of the project, and supporting and paying everybody appropriately for the work. And then coming to the final supporting material, the public engagement plan. So it's not required for Strand 1. But for Strand 2 and Strand 3, it's a really important element. The public engagement plan is requirement is that it's bespoke. Claire mentioned earlier that public engagement and audience engagement is a pillar of Arts Council policy in making great artwork. this is a really important part of this award, the public engagement plan. We do, request that it is bespoke. So if you're working with a partner organization, it's really good to develop a plan with them, or even bring in specialists, public engagement curators or producers to help you with this aspect of the proposal or project. There's a real opportunity here for, I suppose, ambition, and it's not just for large audiences. I suppose there was a question earlier to clarify what ambition is. It's not just in scale, but it could be in originality, in reach, in the delivery technically of the project, in terms of the ambition of the work or fabrication of the work, but also there's ambition within the public engagement, and it's not just large numbers. It could be a very targeted community of interest or place. And I suppose this is a real distinction of this project, and we have titled Strand 2 and Strand 3 with engagement in the title. So it will be a significant aspect to any application for the project award. Thanks, Aletta. Can move on to the next slide. So just to kind of do an overview, what the assessors are looking for, and obviously this comes up with the shortlisted applications that go to panel as well. So the process is described in the guidelines as well, but just for the presentation and the clinic here today, we'll just do an overview. But the artistic quality of your application. So this is really the concept or idea of your proposal that you can write about in your proposal, but also the artistic quality is measured on your track record and the track record of your collaborators and partners. But clearly conveying the concept and the critical frame of your project and how you propose to deliver it, and that public engagement element and the originality of that idea, but also maybe the uniqueness of the location and that public engagement encounter for audiences is all wrapped up in the artistic quality. And the assessment text that you would receive back, whether successful or not successful, will have a heading with artistic quality and will detail how the assessor understood the artistic quality presented in your application. It's important that you support your application with really good CVs and examples of work. The objectives and priorities of the award will be considered. Two clear priorities. This project award is to support projects of ambition, but also that demonstrate a really strong proposal for public engagement. So I've gone into that before. There are various, I suppose, aspects of your proposal where you can demonstrate this. There's a section in section 2 of the application form where you can detail how your application meets the priorities of the award, and that's a really good way of thinking through how you meet those priorities, and they are listed, and Claire went through them earlier under each of the strands. That's detailed in the guidelines as well. And then the feasibility. This is understood as kind of how you've put together your budget, your project plan, the personnel involved in the project, and that track record. So altogether, that'll be reflected in terms of the feasibility. It's also considered, have you paid everybody and yourself included appropriately? That'll cover the scale and duration of the project. So all of that will be kind of thought through under that feasibility section. So just to kind of end, before we go into the questions that we've received and then address the kind of new questions that have arrived during the clinic, we'll just kind of go over a few useful tips. I've mentioned guidelines several times, but it's really important that you read them carefully and use the application form checklists so that you've completed all of the sections, but that you've also included all of the supporting material. The guidelines really do guide you through the whole application. So, and also they'll give you some of the references to the background policy that Claire mentioned earlier as well, so that you can check that out. So I would advise to use all sections of the application form to add detail. That could be in the activity section. There's also a section about your collaborators. It's good to, the word count in the proposal section is quite short at 500 words. So if you use all parts of the application form and just double check that you've completed it all. If you can check, I suppose, the eligibility, your eligibility of the award. And if you had any queries on this, I mentioned a few organizations that cannot apply and various kind of caveats around that. So if you had any questions around that, you can contact the team directly. So we would suggest plan very carefully your budget, include all artist fees. Just remember that the project award is competitive and various people will read your application. So you just, take the opportunity to clearly outline the when, the who, and the why, and any kind of conceptual kind of ideas in your proposal. So clarity of writing is really good. And it's useful to ask somebody to read over your application, a peer, to just sense check it. Thanks, Aletta. I'll hand back to you now.
Thank you, Eilish. So just really quickly, some useful resources and contacts. So if you have any visual arts awards related queries, you can get in touch with visual arts at artscouncil.ie, which is an inbox that's monitored by Justine Harrington, the visual arts assistant. And we can get back to you there. So if you have any questions regarding applying for disability access costs, or if you need help with your application, you can get in touch with our disability access officer, who is Vanessa Carswell. Then if you have any technical queries, so this would be related to maybe the online portal, or you have trouble submitting supporting documents, you can get in touch with the online services team on their email address or on their phone number over there. The Arts Council website, of course, will feature funding rounds, upcoming funding rounds, open funding rounds, and guidelines. You can consider subscribing to our monthly newsletter if you want to be kept up to date every month of application windows, deadlines, and other initiatives that are happening at the time. And then lastly, there's the Arts Council YouTube channel, which is where we upload the funding clinics to, but there's also policy presentations and more on there. So it's great to be aware of. We're moving now into our question section. So there's a couple of questions that were previously submitted to this to us, which we will answer now. So Eilish, I don't know if you want to take this one, but what is the difference between bursary and project activities?
Thanks, Aletta. So I suppose the bursary primarily is to support an artist or practitioner, curator to buy time in order to engage with their practice or to spend time developing new body of work, resolving work, reflecting on practice, or it's like a re-engagement with practice after a break. So that could be either to study or for various work opportunities, but it does offer, I suppose, a development of your practice. Whereas the project award is more so about delivery of a project. So obviously strand one is, pre-planning, but strand 2 and 3 are very much for delivery of a final project. So that would be a big difference, and it does cover production, whereas bursary is really more about your fees, and you might bring in some collaborators to help develop your practice, but really a project award is for delivery. I think that covers it, but the time frame for project awards is, so this round of applications is for projects delivered in 2026. And that is very much, you know, it's a 12-month time frame, and that is very much why we're looking for projects that are ready to be delivered and quite resolved. So it is competitive in that context, because there's a lot already resolved going into Strand 2 and Strand 3. Strand 1 used to have a more emphasis on research and development. It's certainly not that now. So the 12,000 euros of Strand 1 is really to support testing ideas. It could be, filming a short tester piece of footage. It could be testing editing, choreography, testing fabrication of sculpture. So it's really, it's not research and development. It's a production that's conceived, and you want to test out some ideas before going on for the larger funding, but also that time to develop partnerships in that. So I suppose the time frame is reflective of the fact it's Strand 2 and Strand 3 are for projects that are ready to develop, ready to be delivered. So yeah, I think that's clear enough, hopefully. Moving on then to the third question we received. So will there be another round of project awards in 2025? No, we just have the one round. So yes, and can we apply for 2 project awards? So really, it is detailed in the guidelines, and there's some more detail on that there, but you can apply for one. You could be lead applicant on one project award, and you can only apply to one art form. So, one visual arts project award. But you could also be, maybe mentioned in another project award in a much kind of smaller role, for example. And that's a little bit about feasibility, that if you were to receive a project award, that, it presumably would be your priority. And should section 2.2 focus on the curator lead applicant, and the samples of work focused on the curatorial lead applicant and the artist in the proposal? It would need to, I suppose it could cover everybody. Definitely a lot of the artistic quality would be a mixture of everybody's track record to a large extent. You can lead, I suppose, with the curator lead applicant and demonstrating previous projects. I think that would give the assessors in the panel the best sense of how you propose to deliver your project. But if you were proposing to work with, say, 2 artists, it'd be really important to include examples of their work that suit the proposal and the project that you're applying for. So, if they're filmmakers, it's much better to include a sample of their work, which would give us the greatest sense of kind of how to anticipate that either exhibition or project. I hope that's clear.
Great. Yeah, we can move on to the questions we've received during the presentation, and I'll just stop recording for that part.